So last week, and really the week before, we went through Malchios, and then we went to Zichronos. So real quick recap, just because it's good to keep this fresh in our mind, especially as Rosh Hashana is coming. So it's something to think about, right, as we're sitting in long davening. So in Malchios, what we learned was the idea of Malchios, right? On the one hand, we're supposed to be Mamlich Hashem. We're supposed to be coronating or making Hashem King of Kings in the world. But on the other hand, it's also Yom Adin, right? We saw that. And so the Chaim brought these two ideas together and said that what we're really being judged upon is how much we ourselves are making Hashem King in our world and our lives, right? Both on a communal level and on a individual level. That was where he started with Malchus. Then he moves into Zichronos, and he started to compare and contrast. What does Zichron mean for a person versus what does it mean for Hashem? So for us, to remember something, it's like a step-by-step process. First, we have to remember that something happened, and then we can take action on that. And he also talks about the idea that in a courtroom, first the witnesses have to testify and say, well, this is what we saw, this is what happened, this is what we observed. And then the judges, jury, whomever can make decisions based on, what admissions were, what evidence brought in from witnesses, that sort of thing. But it's all based on the recollections, right? That you have to have a recollection first, then the judge can do something with it. By Hashem, there's no such thing as zichron. It's there in front of him. So what does it mean when we say that Hashem remembers? Now, we have many psukim where it says that like we brought in last week, where it says Hashem remembered Bnei Israel in Mitzrayim in Egypt while they were slaves, and then he took action. So what does that mean? Like he didn't remember, it's not like he forgot. So what does that mean? And the Sifsei Chaim explains that for whenever we see that by Hashem, it means that Hashem is changing his the way that he rules, or the way that he sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? The way that the way that he's manhig, the way that he leads us. Is he doing it from judgment, from din, or is he doing it from rachamim? So when he remembers Bnei Israel in Egypt, he's changing over to rachamim, and he's saying it's time. Like it's time for them to leave. It's time for them to get out. It's gotten bad enough, etc. So that's sort of a key word for us, just to understand that means that the way that Hashem, that's what I was looking for, is the way that Hashem relates to the world is changing. So it's not that he has to remember and then do it. It's just simply that he's changing. And so what we said was that in the Zichronos, what we should be thinking about is on the one hand, how much are we thinking about Hashem? How much are we bringing Hashem into our lives? And the mirror of that is the more that we do that, then the more that Hashem relates to us with Rachamim right away and changes the way that he interacts, or the way that he, the context or the way that we relate to him, and he relates to us. Okay, so that's sort of what we've seen up until this point. So we're going to try and get into Shofros. This is a long piece. We're not going to get through all of it, but I want to try and get on at least a couple of the main points that really, I think, sort of bring it all together and hopefully, again, give us a good message and something to be prepared for as we go into davening on Rosh Hashana. Okay, so this starts off Shover Kivan de la Zikaron hu Kalifnim Dami. So what that means is that the shofar, because it is considered lazikaron, that it's as if we are in front of Hashem himself, like in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So let's actually take a look at that in depth. So Chazal gilu lanu eich HaKadosh Baruch Hu danosanu. Chazal revealed to us how Hashem actually judges us. Kadesh nada omek hadin v'nada lischonin likras hadin b'tshuva v'darchei ritzrei lefanav. In order that we should understand first, what does this judgment really mean? Like, what's the depth of it? And also so that we can understand how we can, relate to the din and how we prepare for it, what tshuva and the things that we should be doing in our lives to prepare for it. So Agon Rav Yisrael Salanter Zatzal Kosev. So he quotes Rav Yisrael Salanter, and he says, Ha'adam hu ubnei beso hatluyim. He says a person and all those members of his family, bisakana gadola, they are in great danger. Le'es din hagadol, at the time of the great judgment. He ace tekiyas shofar b'Rosh Hashanah. What is the time of great judgment, that we're in great danger? That's at the time when they blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Asher ha'adam nizkar v'nishpat al ma'asav. That's when we are remembered and we are judged on our actions. V'hu be'es halazeh nidme lekohen gadol be'es shenichnas lebeis kodesh kodashim. So we are similar. We are compared to or similar to the Kohen Gadol when he goes into the Kodesh Kodashim. K'mavur b'chazal, as the Gemara says, Shofar b'Rosh Hashanah keven de lezikaron hu k'bifnim dami. That on Rosh Hashanah, the shofar, because we consider it to be Yom HaZikaron, it's a zikaron, therefore it's as if we are right there in the Kodesh Kodashim. We are the Kohen Gadol of our own, I guess, destiny, I suppose. V'ka'asher koach hatzir mo'el musar. And because the power of like imagining this, right, of creating this picture helps to sort of move us along, to make us take action. Yitzar ha'adam ba'atzmo ilu haya kohen gadol v'haya tzarich likanes v'yomekim lebeis kodesh kodeshim haya chored me'od lenafsho. And because of this, right, this picture should, creates this image of us that we should be going into, or that we should be really, afraid, right? This should give us great fear. Bal yifkoehu ra'chalila, lest we, have something really, have the wrong judgment or have something really bad happen to us. Chalila. That's why he says that the Chazal say that, we know that we can use basically any shofar would be kosher to blow on Rosh Hashanah, but Chazal said no, not the shofar shel the para, the horn that comes out of an ox or out of a bull, that you cannot use. Why? Mishum she'ein kategor na'aseh snegor. Let me pause to just explain that. So why? Because the prosecutor cannot become the defending attorney, meaning that it's an allusion back to cheta ego, right? So we don't want the shofar who is our snegor, who is helping us to get the right din from the best din we can. We don't want that shofar to now become the prosecutor, as it looks like it's referring to cheta ego. So therefore, we don't use the horn of an ox or of a bull. Now, the Gemara starts to try to understand this, but wait a second here. But even though, right, you can go in with gold clothing on, right? There's no problem of us going in with wearing gold on Rosh Hashanah, but why would that be? Or I mean, why should that be? Why shouldn't that be a problem? Because that also looks like we're, looks like it's an allusion to cheta ego. Shofar keven de zikaron asi, but no, because the shofar is coming for zikaron. And we are being judged based on that. So therefore, we're like the Kohen Gadol, who also doesn't wear gold. And again, the shofar is that's the relationship. But and so Rabbi Yisrael Salanter ends by just saying that with these things in mind, that we should be going to Rosh Hashanah with the nefcharada, meaning that we should be really thinking about tshuva and setting our actions, correctly and trying to do better so that we can enter Rosh Hashanah with the mind of tshuva. Okay, but we're going to go further, right? We're going to really try to understand this a little bit better. So go and Rav Yisrael Salanter lomar shnei devarim megamar. So Rav Yisrael Salanter is saying two things. Shofar given to Lezikron who kibifnim dami reishi. So what does that Gemara mean? That it's as if we're in the Kodesh Kodashim. So the first thing is Adam nishbat be'es tchias shofar zepershe Lezikaron hu. So the first thing is that Rav Yisrael Salanter is revealing is the idea that the time of Tekiyah Shofar is the judgment. When we think about Yom Adin means when the shofar is being blown. And that is the explanation of that it's Yom HaZikaron. Dula Zikaron Hu. Veshenis, meaning that shofar kiven Dula Zikaron Hu, that's the Zikaron, that means shofar. Veshenis, and the second thing he's revealing to us is Shudome Az, the Kohen Gadol, Shenichnas the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The other thing that he's revealing from this very, difficult to understand Chazal is that, what does it mean? Kibifnim dami, it means that we are like the Kohen Gadol going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So b'shnei advarim yachad efshar lishtamesh letzayir la'atzma tzir chushi, we can really develop sort of a picture that really sort of gets to us all the way down to our emotions. Eich shehu omed be'ez tekiyas shofar be'Kodesh HaKadoshim. That how we would be standing at the time of Tekiyah Shofar in the Kodesh Kodashim, Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, she'omed sham becharada gadola, that we should be standing just like the Kohen Gadol does in the Kodesh Kodashim on Yom Kippur, with a lot of trepidation. That's probably the better translation. Magon Salanter Masbir Rekama Makomos b'Michtov she'ein b'yedias musar Mufshatos Daili Yaser Ulaharid Ulaharish Es Ha'adam. So he says that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, in all of his writings, he really tries to get through to sort of develop this idea, to really sort of make it real to people that this is what is going on Rosh Hashanah, and this is what we have to be cognizant of. Right, so this becomes a path for us to go. Shemagi Dvarim. We just got started a couple of minutes ago, so you're not too late. We're just getting started saying that it's sort of a very powerful idea from Yisrael Salanter. This is based on a Chazon, on the Gemara, that says that the Tekiyah Shofar on Rosh Hashanah, when we hear that we are, it's as if we are the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and therefore we should have a lot of trepidation during those moments of the blowing of the shofar. Okay, so we're now just developing this idea. So we should be with a lot of invested energy and emotion. We should be thinking about our ways, thinking about who we are. Right? That's this whole idea that we are like the Kohen Gadol going to the Kodesh Kodashim. That should be a sort of an image that moves us to take action. That should drive us to really take things to heart. This should also really waken up in us that emas adin, that fear of judgment at the time of Tekiyah Shofar. So it says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter eno masbir as etzem maimer razal ma perish shofar keven delizikaron hu k'mifnim dami misamek na b'divrei Gemara. So he says, but let's really try to go a little bit deeper than and really try to understand what maybe the pieces that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter did not fill in for us. V'nil mad b'menu bezos Hashem kama hilchasa gvirta be'inyan shofar v'zikaron v'akesha b'neim. Says let's really try to develop this idea between shofar and zikaron. Right, we have zichronos and shofros. Clearly, what we're seeing is some kind of a connection between them. He says let's try to develop it a little bit further. So Ula Amar. So when we talk about the idea that we can blow any shofar on Rosh Hashanah except the shofar of a bull, because it's an allusion to Chet Egel. So Ula says regarding that, so he says, so Rav Chisda says, why doesn't the Kohen Gadol go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim with the Big Day Zav, with the golden garments on, the standard garments that a Kohen Gadol would be wearing? He wears only white, because we don't want to waken up that idea of the Chet Egel. Va'ika Aron v'kaparas ukhuv. But wait a second here. But You go into Kodesh Kodashim, you got the Aron, you got the Kaporos, which is on top of the Aron, you've got the Kruvim, all that's gold, right? So why isn't that a problem on Yom Kippur? Why aren't we like we do in Shul? Why don't we put a white Kaporos on top of the Aron and cover it up, or why isn't that a problem? So Chote Bal Yakriv Kamrinan. So the Gemara answers Lo Yaseh B'Zav Avoda, because he says the problem isn't that there's furniture. I shouldn't say furniture, but there's kelim in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Kodesh Kodashim that are gold. That's not the problem. The problem is the person who is doing the avoda. Right? These are the kelim and they're gold. That's not a problem. The problem is the person who's actually doing the avoda cannot be wearing gold. But wait a second here. But there are kelim that are actually being used by the Kohen Gadol, right? There's the cup, there's the spoon, there's actually kelim that he picks up and he uses for the incense, for what he puts on the lechma panim, all those different things. That's part of the avoda. He's using them. They're in his hand, and they're made from gold. So. Right, so but he's not getting pleasure from them. Bide kahuna misnaya, but there he doesn't get pleasure from those from just picking up a spoon. But there is an idea apparently of the hana that you would get when from the clothing that you are wearing, and therefore the clothing that he's wearing has to reflect the idea that we want to distance ourselves from cheta egel. Okay, yeah. A big day. Zahav Mebechutz, but wait a second. When he's outside of the Kodesh HaKodashim, he doesn't have to wear the white garments. He could be wearing the gold ones as well. No, it's only when he's actually doing the avoda in the Kodesh HaKodashim that's when it becomes a problem. So you can see the Gemara is really trying to understand, like, when is it a problem? Where is it a problem? Why is it a problem? Like, we're really trying to narrow down this idea and not just make it very broad.
Jeff.
Sorry, yeah.
Just sorry. Korbanot, they were not korbanot on Yom Kippur, right? They were not offerings.
Well, they weren't offerings. They weren't like the standard. You couldn't bring a shlamim or a toda or something like that. No, as an individual, those there were not. But there were still the korban tamid and the special korbanos that were being brought. For the kehila, right? Every yontif we have a chatas that's brought for the tzibor. We have special korbanos that are only brought on Yom Kippur. So those were brought. But yes, you're right. Individuals were not. No one else was going up to the Beis Hamikdash to bring a korban on Yom Kippur.
My question is if they brought bulls to the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippur.
Oh, would they bring bulls? That's a good question. I think there were. I think the chatas was both ksavim and part and yeah. But apparently that's not a problem because maybe that's because it's not it's not a part of the avoda itself. It's the object of the avoda. I don't know. That's I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. But it doesn't seem to be like that for whatever reason wasn't even brought up as a question. But I'm not sure. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, but we'll keep going. So now he says, okay, so shofar nabi bechutzu, but also the shofar is being blown outside. What does that mean? V'lama shofar shofar apostle kevan delazikaron hu kilifnim damish. The Gemara answers. So what is about the shofar? I mean, what's going on? It should be considered bechutz. It's not going to the Kodesh Kodashim, but yet. The Gemara says, "Kevan de zikaronhu kilifnim dami," because it's for zikaron. Therefore, it's as if it's in the base. I'm sorry, it's as if it's in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Okay, so lamadnu she'ein k'neger nasas neger ne'amarak al avoda bifnim. So the first thing we learn is that when we say this idea of not, of trying to distance ourselves from the cheta egel, that is only when we're talking about something that's going into the Kodesh HaKodashim. Because when you're going into a place of such holiness, even a small, piece of schmutz, right? Even a small stain or something like that becomes, it becomes very obvious or becomes magnified. So we have to avoid even the smallest bit. Because
and there the gold is going to be somehow be a mentioning or a remembrance of the avon of Chet Egel. Maskeres avonu kaisher adam rotze lazos avoda lifnei Hashem tzaros bedavar sheyesh bo eza zikaron lechet ki maskeres avon ze mafriya lis karvus al Hashem. And in that process, when we're talking about being in front of in a Makom Kadosh and being in a place where we're trying to connect to Hashem and we're trying to find favor in Hashem, we want that's exactly where something like any kind of maskeres avon, anything that's going to be a reminder of sin, that is going to impede us from connecting to Hashem. So let's go weiter. So Tosas Omrim, Ugabe shofar misna nami bekot kiyaso. And Tosfos explains chote ba'yisna, that you don't want to get pleasure for something that is going to be a remembrance of sin. And he says that the call of the shofar is also gives us some pleasure. Ayin Rashi sheyesh lashitas acheres. Okay, tkiyas shofar ba kadei she'adam yisna lifnei hakadosh baruch hu. So Tosfos is explaining that the shofar comes in order for us to have hana in front of hakadosh baruch hu. Ayidei shemis orer letshuva. What does that mean that we get hana? It doesn't obviously mean in a physical sense, like when we eat something, it's not like a shmak, but what it is it's a hana in a very spiritual way, meaning that we get hana when we are woken up for tshuva, because I guess of that closeness that we get to Hashem. Kivisha dorshu, lashon shofar, shipru ma'asechem. Why do we call it a shofar? So the Medrash explains why shofar, like where does that word come from? Shipru ma'asechem, that we make our actions nicer, better, prettier, something like that, like we're improving them. Lefi divrei Tosfos tzarich lomar shepshita lo she'al shofar ne'amar chote bal yakriv ki shofar hu bebechinas hakrava. The shofar, according to Tosfos, is really a vehicle towards hakrava, like a korban is, and that's why we have this metaphor of going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim as the shofar, because that's Sha'osa Avoda Shoha his Karvus al Hashem Yisparach, because the shofar is the vehicle that gets us to closeness to Hashem. However, V'adayin tzarech bir shofar keven de lezikaron hu klifnim dami lama hu lezikaron v'lama hu kibifnim. So still, we have to still understand. He says, why is shofar a zikaron? And why is it as if we're in the base in the Kodesh HaKodashim? Okay. So he goes further a little bit with Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Says, "Kazabe mechtava shebeis tikias shofar adam nizkar v'nishpat lifnei Hashem. I am besidra gra isha Yisrael lifnei tikias shofar shofar hu bitoy lemishpat." So it says, just like Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, that at the time of blowing of the shofar, that is judgment. And he says that we see in the siddur of the gra, he says that the shofar is considered to be an expression of mishpat. For instance, when the basting comes out, and I think that means that when they put something in cher, when they do something, when they make a judgment, that especially a very difficult judgment, they blow shofar. Adam tokeya b'shofar tovea la'aruch lo mishpat. There's a connection between mishpat of judgment, like basted judgment, and using it and blowing the shofar. And then also is what changes over midas adin to midas harachamim, right? When we go into judgment, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for not for din, right? We're looking for rachamim. Okay, bezeh mishatek as a kategar kihu ba'atzmo toveya din ke'en bechinas moda b'knas pater. So this is this is such a beautiful idea. So what's going on here? We're the ones blowing shofar. So it's as if we're calling ourselves to din, and because we're calling ourselves to din, we are toveya. We are the plaintiff and the defendant all in one. Because of that can bring on the rachamim. And he says that this is like he says ke'en bechinas moda b'kinas pater. There's an idea that if I steal from you, and then I come back and I say I admit it, I stole from you. Here it is. So normally when you steal from somebody, when you pay back, like you're taking a based in, it's proven out, then I would have to pay pishnayim, maybe chamesh, arba v'chamesh, depending on what it is specifically that I stole, but I would have to pay more as a knas, as a fine. If I'm moded to it, if I admit that I stole it from you, then the knas goes away. There is no, I don't have to pay twice. I just have to pay back the principal, but not any kind of fines. So he says that this is sort of the same idea, that if I am bringing myself to judgment, that you can see the rachamim is brought in. I don't have to pay the fine, and in this case, we can change the din over to rachamim.
Probably I wouldn't forgive you either, even if you pay me double or triple, or the other way around. Doesn't matter who's. But probably if you were found guilty and you have to pay, probably I wouldn't forgive you. But if you
that's a good point too. I think that might be a separate point, but I think you're making a good point, which is certainly when you're trying to get rachamim from your neighbor, from your friend, from the person that you did that to, admission is certainly going to get you a lot further than having to be schlepped into based in, kicking and screaming. Yeah. All right. I think we only have a couple of minutes, but we'll finish with this. And this is also chesed, that at the time of Tkiyah Shofar, that's when we are being judged, because that is the time that we're woken up, right? The idea of the trua is a language of his orurus, that the blowing of the shofar should wake us up to do tshuva, and that also is chesed, because that same action that's bringing us into court is also bringing us to tshuva. And Hashem knows it. Hashem knows what we're thinking, what we're feeling. I'm saying a little bit of this outside just because we're just about out of time. I wanted to get to one other piece. We're just not going to have time to do it. There's an idea. Maybe I can say it outside really quickly. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but there's a question like, why 100? Why, right? We have 100 kolos that we have to hear. Why 100? And I think I think the Aruch brings it down. I'm not sure where it's actually learned out from, but it comes from Aim Sisra. Right? Have you heard this? That comes from, right? Sisra was killed by Yael by this is the time of Barak and Devorah, right? When the Canaanim are giving us trouble, and Sisra is their big general, and Barak is defeating him because Hashem is on our side. So Sisra runs away. He runs right into Yael's tent. Yael kills him, and now Aim Sisra is crying because her son Sisra is late, and he's never late, right? He's the big general. He's never late. He's always on time, and yet so she cried 100 cries, and therefore so everyone has like, what, Aim Sisra? That's what we're learning it from. So he brings down that it's not really the Aim Sisra. That's only a piece of it. The other story is Yael. Yael, and this is also from Chazal. The Gemara says that Yael did an avera lishma. Right? Then how did she get him? He fell asleep, and then she could kill him. How did he fall asleep? She had relations with him, apparently 7 times, and he fell asleep, and then she killed him. The question is, how does she do that? That's an avera, right? To have relations with Sisra. But she did it lishma, meaning that she had no other intentions, no intentions of pleasure or anything else. It was literally like, I'm going to do this because that's how I'm going to kill this general, and that's how I'm going to save Klal Yisrael. And because of that, when she does that, that's a very powerful action on her part. And the opposite is that Aim Sisra is now very upset because evil in the world, Sisra, has been destroyed. That's the connection, and that's why it's all about Aim Sisra, not necessarily Aim Sisra, but Aim Sisra's crying on the destruction of that evil, of the destruction of Sisra. And that's what we're wanting, is we want more destruction of evil, right? We want evil to disappear, right? Right? We're saying everyone should have Pachad Hashem, the Jews, non-Jews, everybody. That's what we're davening from Rosh Hashana. And so Aim Sisra is, I'm upset that the evil's gone. And now what we're saying is, now we're blowing shofar because we want more of that, right? We want evil to completely go away. We want, you talk about shofar gadol, we want Mashiach to be coming. That's the great shofar that blows, right? That's what we want Rosh Hashanah to herald in, is the time of Mashiach when there's no evil. So I'm sorry I had to say that all outside, but it's just such a powerful idea that I wanted to at least bring it in somehow. So With that, we'll stop here, and everyone should have a ksiva chasima tova.